Okay, sees it. Everything's looking good. Okay, we're live. Good stuff. Thanks everyone for coming in. Good afternoon. It's a cool down Saturday. I think the remnants of the hurricane is now finally hitting Canada after all this time. So it's a Category 1, and all of our Nova Scotians are, I don't know, either shipping out or bottling up their windows and whatever you do in those scenarios. What a great day. It's still kind of cool, but hey, thanks for coming in. And once again, we are doing another response video to interesting stuff on the YouTubes, which, well, it's either fun to laugh at or just kind of hard to grasp. So we have to sort of wrap our brains around it. And we
I
do.
do have to admit that after covering Vosh for so long, it's nice to cover some guy who knows what he's talking about to a much better extent.
Well, with people like Vosh and Lavachan, we just could have just throw our
Love it,
hands in
Chan.
the air going, I don't know where they're coming from half the time. And I have to admit that Vosh is more of a performance artist. If he actually
Yeah,
believes the things he does, then all he needs to do is sit down with any adult and explain how the world works for about 5 minutes. I think he'd be fine. Of course, he'll argue and not agree and get angry, but that's part of him being him. So that's fine. But with this guy, I actually like the person we're doing. His name, let me just check, is Jonathan Pageau. He seems to be very articulate. He knows what he's talking about. But in this regard, in the symbolism and propaganda video, regards to popular culture or popular movies, he seems to be reaching rather far. And on most cases in our analysis or in our response videos, we look at people who are on the far left or have this very strange other way of thinking. This gentleman is probably attacking the far left in the most improper, or it's like he's shooting blanks. It's hard to describe what he's talking about half the time.
I can see where he's coming from in some ways, but I don't really see it. It's kind of yeah. It's mainly just seems like reaching to me. It seems like reaching to me. In fact, anyway, people out there. I mean, I could see people seeing, watching his video and saying, "Yeah, I can see how that works, and it might make sense to you." But at least to me, it doesn't seem like it seems like reaching.
Yeah, and the problem with symbolism, especially in popular movies, unless it's blatant, unless it's very clear, you're going to be interpreting every single thing in your own way. And if there's no actual physical symbol to tie it in, like with, let's say, Superman's crest or a loaded symbol like a crucifix, you're going to be very confused and you're not sure what this means. You can look at a crucifix and say, okay, this means Judeo Christianism, this could represent Jesus, this could represent the German army, this could represent all sorts of things. So when you have loaded symbols, it's very complicated to differentiate exactly what exact meaning you're pointing to. And that's why we say symbolism is three components. It has the actual symbol or the physical insignia or whatever the thing is, the reference. You have the idea or ideas behind it, which can be multitude. And then you have the actual character that's associated with those two things. And if you don't draw those three relationships properly connected, your audience is going to be like, what does this mean? And then they're just going to default to what they think, whatever those symbols represent. And that's historical relevancy to their experiences. So Christianity is the cross, and all these other, like the rose, it could be represent love, and all those things that we tend to think of when we think of symbols. So yeah, let's get going, guys.
One of the important aspects of interpreting symbolism in culture is the capacity to discern patterns not only within stories, but also across them. The capacity to notice these patterns will help us see when certain directions, certain deep movements and changes are taking form in culture. It will give us the capacity to, let's say, read the signs of the times.
I don't really consider symbolism as a very clear sign of the times. I don't know how to do it. We can look at actual groups that have symbols, like Antifa, or maybe religious groups that are on people's radar because they're fanatics or they make a loud noise, and we can say, okay, that's a symbol of that group, but it's not really a trend. It's not part of popular culture. It's just a story on the news prompter. So I'm not
Yeah, a
sure.
symbol is kind of a it's kind of like a condensed list of elements and other things that instantly tell you visually what is being conveyed here. So you gave the example of a rose, and to most people, that signifies probably love. Depending on the context, it could signify death. It could signify a whole roster of things. But I'm not really sure if it would be a good uh, tool to use for the changing of the times, because symbols have to have that element of time with them. So you can't come out with something just now and it resonates with a whole bunch of people. It doesn't work like that in literary terms anyway. So if you're going to put a symbol in a movie, now you can come up with a company tomorrow and have your own logo, and then people will say, no, it's your company. But it has to grow from there. More people have to look at your logo. More people have to recognize that logo as yours. And then once all those people have experienced your products and your services, then they will start to associate different attributes to that logo, kind of like how the Apple symbol now represents tyranny and all that stuff. But when you go to a movie or literary terms, you have to have symbols that the general audience would recognize and will be able to feel when they see it. So when you're watching a movie, it has to be something more along the lines of something that has already had that tested time. And if you're using it in a movie, you're more than likely going to have a symbol that can resonate with more people, that has already had that time to develop its character, the symbol's character.
Especially when you're referring to contemporary stories or any sort of non-fiction or non-fantasy stories where they're talking about either rechanging history, like in the Wonder Woman story, where she's a fighter in World War II or what have you. It's like, okay, we can identify some of these historical figures or scenarios, but once you start going into fantasy and you create, I don't know, a mystical order of elven warriors and they have their own crests and what have you, then that takes on its own thing. Mm-hmm. So they might have the same classic ideas behind peace, let's say an olive branch or a dove or what have you. So that could work in conjunction with your lore that you just invented, but you still have to draw the connections. You can't just lay it out. Oh yeah, a rose is totally flower, is love and all that. It's like, no, it could represent something else. And if the writer or author doesn't explain that, then your audience is like, well, clearly this is a story about love, even though it's a story about war and people dying. So,
that's a pretty good difference there. Like if you have a order of elves in your story, that's just from your story, and they have their own symbol, then only your fans or people who read it will know the symbol. But if you want to use a more universal symbol, like the olive branch to represent peace, for example, then you can use the olive branch to represent peace in a more general term. But if you want to, say, use the symbol of your elven order in another book or something, no one's going to get it, because people have to have felt and experienced and know the meaning behind the symbol. That's why it has to be more universal and has to have that time-tested meaning set behind it.
Yeah.
So you have to have that olive branch. Everyone knows what that is, because it's been around for so long. That symbol's been around for so long.
And not in sort of this household sort of term, like everyone recognizes the Coca-Cola symbol or any kind of branding. I mean, that takes a lot of time, and you have to be very specific. So we're not talking about specifically, consumerism or things that have been popularized, but things that have actual innate meaning, like the octagon. We kind of get that as the stop sign universally. You might go to different countries, they might use a different shape, different color, but it's pretty much universal. So basic ideas, signs and symbols, and how we understand them. So gauging the sign of the times, probably not the best breadcrumb to follow when you're looking at what is going on in the world.
Sometimes an understanding of symbolism can be used for purposes of propaganda and to push certain social agendas.
I'm guessing this is his intro?
I believe so.
Okay.
This is Jonathan Pageau. Welcome to the symbolic world.
Oh, okay. Very good.
pretty nice.
Byzantine art.
Now, in the movies I've interpreted until today, many of them have a certain trope, which I have mentioned now and again in passing. This trope is the replacing of the masculine hero by a feminine one. We see this pattern.
Is that really a trope or just a thing? That
I think it's something that's occurring now. I'm not really sure if it's a trope. It might be like something that's new, but it is. He's right about that. It is something that is occurring in modern, at least Western media.
Yeah, because there's plenty of examples of heroes replacing heroes or characters replacing characters in one capacity for whatever reason. That could be done in farce, that could be done in comedy, that could be done in drama. So where you want to have girl power or masculinity or whatever, it's pretty pretty standard stuff. I try to think of like something more popularized, that less
You
farce.
could have you could get the example of Creed, where Rocky is now training a new fighter that will likely take on the mantle that Rocky once had as one of the greatest fighters in the world. But then you have something, because that's organic. That is Apollo Creed's son coming in and say, "Hey, I want to fight. Can you teach me? Because you were my dad's greatest rival." And that's an organic storytelling element. But then you have something like what they're going to do with the MCU is replace Thor with Lady Thor, and it's not organic. It's just something that they want to do in order to promote a propaganda piece. So it's a difference here. You can have heroes changing hands, but it becomes a little different when they're doing it because they want to push a message, rather than having it happen and occur organically. There's no organic switch from okay, you're Thor now. You gain all the powers of Thor. You get the hammer. I mean, where was she this whole time? She was a character that happened to be in, I think, the first Thor movie, and then she's mentioned, I think, another time in another movie, and now suddenly she's Thor. There's no real connection there. There's no real organic trend, no organic pathway to that happening.
Yeah, because
She has
the story or plot line or the overarching plot line of the MCU was to lead to Endgame, and then all of a sudden, well, we have Thor still. He's still around, and now he's worthy, and then now he's suddenly not again. It's like, what, why, how, when? So they have to then bring Thor back as an unworthy character so that someone else can be worthy after he's gone through his arc. It's it's strange.
So this is, and they could have picked anyone else if they had to do this. They could have picked anyone else, but they went ahead with Jane Foster from the movie universe, who was in I believe just in one movie, and then was talked about a little bit, and then just came back. We don't really know anything about her other than what we saw in the first movie, and it's not all that much. Certainly not God level yet.
I would love to see her get buff though. I think that'd be really awesome. just to see her go through the training and just like
she needed help to hold the hammer and stay. So yeah.
Yeah, but I love seeing when actors become method actors. They have to play the part, so they have to actually go. Like Keanu Reeves had to go for training for jujitsu and gun training to do John Wick. Like that takes a lot of effort. So I love to see them. I love to see the actors put in the effort and you get hired, you do your job and you do it well. So you better start getting with the program, lady. So how a dainty little girl like that is going to get buff and become a jock within, I don't know, 4 months or whatever it takes. That'll be impressive, like to pump iron. So I'd like to see just what happens to her physique and her diet, just to do that. If she could even pull it off. Like some people can't do it. Some people can't gain weight. Or
if you look at her on stage, it seems like they pulled her in without her knowing.
It's like, I'm Thor.
Like, by the way, Natalie Portman, you're still on contract with us. And we need someone to play Thor. And she says, "Wait, what? I'm still on contract with you?" It's just the oh crap look on her face. What have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, same with the character of Valkyrie. I don't think she was so pro. Was it bisexual or pro whatever as a person? Maybe she is actually. It doesn't really matter. But in the movies, as Valkyrie, she's pretty. Oh, okay, I'm Valkyrie. I'm a badass. But then she realizes that Thor's back, and then she helps out, tries to rebuild Asgard or whatever. Again, I haven't seen the last few movies, so I don't know. But she doesn't seem to be the. I'm a guy. like the way that Ruby Rose is. I'm a guy.
Oh yeah.
I'm a butchy girl, but I'm really a guy. It's like, okay, but you're not. Can you get that through your head, lady? Like I don't know exactly how butchy lesbians act, but it's just like, yeah, okay, we get it. You're butchy. We get it. Just, tone it down.
I remember from 10 minutes ago when he told me the last
Yeah,
time.
like you told me like 5 times already. See, that's when you have really bad storytelling, or marketing at the very least, which is beating you over the head. It's like we get it. And again, we don't care about the propaganda. We don't care about the symbolism of the bad and the females, and we care about good storytelling. So if you present something, you do it subtly, you do it once, you do it well. You don't do it 5 times in music and in words, and then all the other actions you take is just like, God, we get it. Can you just get on with the story, please? So, yeah, we'll see what happens to Natalie Portman. That'll be fun to watch.
Not only in the fact of certain replacements, but it often appears as a pattern within the stories themselves.
Okay, so you mentioned Ocean's 8, which I believe is the female version of the Ocean series, where it's a heist.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one.
No.
But yeah, it was supposed to be the girl power version of Oceans.
Right. Nothing wrong with that idea. I think the idea of a bunch of women seducing or using their feminine charms and tactics to, I don't know, rob whatever is fine as a story. But it's the execution. It's like, I'm sure we can compare all the Ocean movies and see which one is better based off the plot and how the characters interact and what they're good for. So we would have to actually watch that to see. But there's nothing inherently wrong about having a bunch of women run a heist. Why not? Now, with the Ghostbusters, we have another issue. But I don't think it's about symbolism. I think it's just, again, a bad idea. It's a bad idea. You take a I don't know, take any of the great movies of the 80s and just put women in it. You're like, why? Why would you do this? So
Yeah, that's the only thing they had. They didn't really have much of a story. They went with improv humor
which
for whatever reason.
can work. I mean,
It's not really in Ghostbusters.
sure, but a lot of great scenes in movies are improv, but that's provided there's an actual script, and then they play off the idea of the sentence or the scene, and that's when you have comedic actors. Like when you had comedic actors in the first Ghostbusters movie, it just worked. All the scenes just connected, and it all made sense.
I
Whereas
think this Ghostbusters movie, the 2016 one, would have been better if it was more of a parody of the Ghostbusters franchise. Like they made a whole new intellectual property, but it was set to be a parody of it. I think it would have worked a little better.
I think you could say that anything that's gone wrong, make it a parody. I think that's like it's like look at the DC universe. It's like if that was just a parody, and everything's dark and brooding, but you have like Batman like ripping farts all the time, or some Batman and Robin just constantly losing Robins. He just keeps replacing them.
Every time they go out, Robin dies.
Robin dies. It's like that'd be hilarious. It's me, Tim Drake. No, it's Drake Tim. It's Timmy D. It's like, who are you again?
Which Robin are you?
Yeah, I think what's that? Pete Holmes when he was doing Batman stuff on YouTube or his show, like those are absolutely hilarious. Like those are just brilliant. Where he's parodying the Dark Knight franchise, and he's like, "It's so hot in this suit," and he can't he can never disguise himself properly, or he can't do the disappearing trick. Like all the funny things that you would think practically. It's like, yeah, how the hell does Batman do that? It's like why does Batman not use guns, but he does have guns, and he doesn't kill people, but he actually does probably kill people, like stuff like that.
Does.
Yeah, stuff like
You
that.
don't really think about it.
Like that would be funny because everyone knows Batman. It's like, yeah, okay, let's see that.
And I know there's a whole thing about a lot of Batman costumes not being where he's not able to turn his head. He has to turn his whole body if he wants to like look to the side, right? Because he can't just turn his head. It was The Dark Knight, I think, maybe the second movie or something, where they go, so you want to be able to turn your head? He's like, oh yeah, go ahead and do that. And he could finally turn his head without turning all the way around, without turning his whole body all the way around. And I thought that was pretty funny. He's like, oh yeah, he in all of these other movies, he can't actually turn his head. So I mean, that's a pretty big flaw.
Yeah, and Nolan noticed that, made that part of the story, and that was great. But again, with the parody thing, look at the Lego Movie. I don't even remember watching it, but the fact they had Batman in there, it's like you're gonna go watch it. It's because there's Batman, Lego Batman, and
He's a Batman in that movie. He's just like this egotistical, this stuck-up guy. I think in the second one, he says he's so egotistical that the person we think is the villain tricks him into marrying her by saying that she doesn't want him anymore. And then it's like, why don't you want me?
so stuff like that would work in certain contexts, but just replacing men with women, uh, unless it's written well and there's an explanation for it, probably not the best idea as a concept. So again, I don't see what the symbolism of using women is from a propaganda just for doing it. It's just bad ideas.
Now, one thing he might be talking about, this might be something he's trying to refer to, is that they might be using the old symbols, like the uses of old symbols, and then having female characters destroy them or something, like old symbols of masculinity or old symbols of what we call the patriarchy or something. Would be referred to as symbols that would symbolize these weird ideas that the NPCs have, and then having the female character destroy these symbols in the movies. That might be something he might be referring to. So I guess we'll see.
Casper?
It wasn't really Ghostbusters material.
So it's not just that there are more lead feminine characters in stories, which could have been, an opportunity for good storytelling. But it is the very act of supplanting and replacing which is often shown as a story trope. And this trope becomes boldly apparent, especially when we see this pattern appear across several movies. The pattern can take a variety of forms. It can appear as a strange play on the masculine virtue of wanting to save others. Though now, the male character sacrifices himself in order to make way for a feminine character which replaces him. We see this, for example, in the movie Logan. Wolverine sacrifices himself to make way for his female clone.
I think he worded that very strangely. This is kind of like a father-daughter relationship. And
Yeah, and that movie, if I remember correctly, Logan was great. It's a great movie. It's probably my favorite superhero movies from the from Marvel Universe. I'm not even sure it's connected, but they find this girl who is, I think, infused with his blood or something like that, and she is able to. She also has the claws. There is a little girl power because they make her have also foot claws, and they say, "Oh, because she's a woman, she's a female, so she has more claws than you, or she can have foot claws, and you don't." But it seems like more like a father and daughter sort of situation, trying to sacrifice myself so that the future generations can survive. Because I believe that's the setting of this world where all the other mutants have been killed off, and it's they are dying out. Like there aren't very many of them left. I think if I remember correctly, that's the situation.
yeah, I think he's reading or he's explaining it very differently than what I remember. Because in this world, you're right, all the mutants are either dead or gone, and this girl just wants to get with her friends up to Canada because of a comic book she read, which happened to involve Wolverine or whatever X-Men comic that was. So it was kind of like a self-referential joke that, back in the day, X-Men were so great they made comic books about us, and Wolverine was kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, this is silly. But then he realizes that, this is basically his daughter. And at the first, he doesn't care, but then he realizes he has to do something to help her. And he becomes a hero again, and he sacrifices himself, not because it's a female, but because it's a little girl or a little younger person that he wants to protect.
That's a heroic thing to do.
Yeah,
I can also see where he's coming from, because it's not, because he mentioned that this isn't this one instance. He mentioned that this is a big pattern that he's seen in movies, that it's always a man sacrificing himself and then passing the torch, not to just anyone, but to a female counterpart. So it's not just this movie where he passes the torch on to his daughter. It's several movies where the established franchise that was created by men are now stepping aside and passing the new generation not down to a new generation, but down to women. It's a pattern that I think he's talking about here.
Which is really tough to do when you're talking about different studios and different writers and different directors and just different producers in general. Like, it's very difficult to make this association. And yeah, again, with stories, there's going to be a lot of similarities with patterns and what have you, but I really don't see it as the old male making way for the little girl in Logan. Logan was a pretty strong, dramatic story, and it was kind of.
I didn't see it as that. I didn't see it as that.
No,
I saw it as
is the end
him
of an
sacrificing
era.
himself.
Yeah, they wanted it. They took the old man Logan comic, they brought it back to the movies because obviously Patrick Stewart is not going to be immortal, and Hugh Jackman has to get on with his life. So it's like, yeah, this is a great way to end it. They did it. It was a great finish, and that was that. Let it go, and it worked. They interpreted it into a movie, beautifully done. Not a huge budget, but pretty darn good.
It was really good. I mean, I really liked this movie. Legitimately, and not just a comic book movie. But this is one of my favorite movies, just in general. It was really well done. It was really well done. I think she is either from the comics or was inspired by a character from the comics.
Oh, she
I'm not
certainly
really
is.
sure.
Yeah, X-23 came out, geez, a long time ago. So she was definitely an X-Men or in the X-Men comics for a while. I think she actually replaced Wolverine.
I believe so. She's one of those at least nowadays she's one of those SJW NPC heroes who just wins all the time and talks about how lesbian she is.
Oh, really? Joy.
Yeah, and she even has like that half head shaved haircut that they like so much.
Oh, yeah.
It's long hair everywhere else, but half the head is shaved off. I think she has that haircut at one point. Maybe it's the whole thing. It's all the way around. She's shaved, but has hair on top. I forgot which one.
That's a common look even for men. So I wouldn't. We see it a lot in punk. We see it a lot, especially with Cyberpunk coming out next year.
Oh yeah.
So pretty simple stuff. I'm not holding a haircut as a pattern. I mean, fashion is its own thing. Every era has its own fashion. So I'm not going to say that that's a reminiscent of girl power or feminist whatever. That's a pretty big jump. So
yeah. But I mean, the only thing I see here is that he's noticing a pattern in these movies, which is, the pattern does exist. I mean, they even say out loud. A lot of these people from Hollywood say, yeah, we're going to have we're going to have these movies and franchises make room for women. But this one in particular, Logan, I'm not really sure. It seems to me that it was just well played. That it had a little bit of girl power in it, a little bit of girl power reference, but not that much.
No, there was more
overpowering.
like there was like 12 friends or whatever. They all had superpowers
It
too.
was drama.
Yeah.
It was characterization. It was really well done. I didn't really see the distraction there.
Yeah. I just didn't like. Again, I didn't like the way he explained it, but he's going with the angle that this is what's happening. And I'm like, all right, let's see what you have to say.
Yeah, again, I do see where he's coming from. It's just sometimes I think he might be reaching a little bit, like at times.
There's also K in Blade Runner 2049, giving up his place as the son to make room for the daughter.
You imagined it was you. Oh, you did.
But there are many other
That's reaching. Okay, that's
I actually didn't see that movie, so I don't know what exactly happened.
yeah.
Or what the situation was.
Yeah, no, he's already a synthetic life form, so it's like, okay, well, is the robot replacing himself for someone? Like, okay, maybe. I guess. What's the mind of a robot? Yeah.
such scenes in several movies. Sometimes the masculine character will be humiliated and made to look useless.
Our plan, Captain?
Well, okay. How about Moana? I can't remember how to pronounce that, but the guy's a demigod. So
Yeah, it's that instance where he's just full of himself. That's a common trope. You have to admit that's a common trope. I mean, anyone would probably have to admit that, where you have an arrogant character who's just full of himself, and then he has to be brought down, especially if he's the hero, and then he has a character revelation. And I haven't seen Moana, but I assume that's what probably might happen during the course of the movie, where he starts off arrogant and full of himself, and then he's brought down and I guess kind of humiliated. Like he's humble, and then he has a character revelation, and then once he achieves that revelation, he can then conquer whatever needs to be conquered or
Right,
whatever.
and that's a supporting role. I don't believe he's the main character. So it's
Yeah, I think what's her name? Moana. I think
yeah.
he's his name is something else. His name is not Moana.
No.
Although he is played by The Rock, so that gives him rights to claim main character status at any time.
Yeah, no. When you're talking about a kids movie or any kind of like musical or animated stuff, you got to be really, really clear on expressing a story with symbolism is a little higher level technique. So I don't know. There's so much imagery in those movies you can use to explain symbols, but he's just a big tough guy who's rubbery and he bounces around. He doesn't really like he's kind of immortal. You know, he's kind of like not like Gaston, but like a funny, friendly Gaston from Belle or
Yeah,
from
Gaston is my favorite Disney character of all time. He's fantastic, but I won't talk about him now 'cause I'll go on forever. But yeah, this in particular, now I haven't seen Moana, like I said, but this is a common trope. This start off with an arrogant character and then bring him down, and then by what in the third act or something, or depending on the whatever structure you're using, by the middle or so, he's going to start having a character crisis of, okay, my overconfidence is gone, my hubris has been challenged, so now I can start rethinking my whole character, and then he can take on whatever needs to be taken on. But I'm not really sure he's the main character. It's Moana who's the main character, so I'm not really sure where that story goes. But if he were the main character, that's likely what would happen.
Not commander, right? Wasn't it Leia's last official act to demote you for your dreadnought plan?
There are several occasions where the
Okay, I'm pretty sure he's spot on Holdo.
well, yeah. What the problem with Holdo is that because it doesn't make sense, we have nothing to latch onto.
She's just there.
She's there to bash him, and you're like, why are you bashing him?
She's there to bash, humiliate, and emasculate one of this piloting prodigy that they have here, who just took on an entire ship on his own.
And he
got
previously
demoted
blew
for
up the Death Star, or whatever their latest Death Star.
Yeah, the Starkiller base.
Starkiller base. Yeah, so he's an amazing dude. And then she just bashes him, and you're like, why are you bashing him? Why aren't you helping him? Can't you like be a proper leader? No, she can't. So then you're like, why is this happening in the story?
It's so weird because you see this instance happening a lot. You see this scenario happening a lot in movies, but the emphasis is wrong. It's kind of like saying a word with the wrong emphasis, like the comma, I've been told. But usually in this scenario, Poe would be the main character, and then Holdo would be like the angry commissioner. And you see the Poe going out and actually fighting the fight and getting results, and the angry commissioner would be demoting him and saying, "You're not going by the book," and then you're a guy who doesn't play by the rules. And Poe Dameron would be like, "I don't care. I'm going to go out and get results." And like kind of like in Bad Boys, I guess. But if the bad boys actually got punished, but in the Star Wars movie, it's Holdo who is depicted as the character who's in the right, and Poe Dameron being depicted as the character who's in the wrong because he dared defy, I don't know, Princess Leia or something. And for some reason, Holdo exists. I'm still not sure why she exists, other than to just bash him and emasculate him. So I think he's pretty spot on this particular example.
Yeah, but that's the problem with the whole movie. Like, every scene has a problem with it, so we don't know what we can't wrap our brains around why stuff is happening. So the only explanation we've got is that someone upstairs thought this was a good idea, and they decided to produce it. Like, you can interpret that any way. I don't think there's any symbolism behind it, though. It just happens to be a
symbolism,
female.
I don't think.
Yeah, no, it's just Holdo's a female because they wanted one, and that's it. There's no like
purple hair is a symbolism.
Yeah, there's no like she represents peace or intelligence, and that's like a feminine trait, and whatever.
She doesn't represent either of those,
No,
especially not intelligence.
Nothing about it has anything to do with feminine qualities. It's just she happens to be female, and you're like, okay.
The Last Jedi is a legendary movie in terms of absolute failure.
Yes, I would have to agree with that.
Masculine character will willingly get out of the way to make place for a feminine replacement.
Okay, I'm going to need some examples, but because, Poe did not get out of the way. He was demoted, and that's that. Like, he can't do anything about it. And then he actually goes out of his way to not only hatch a plan, but then hatch a mutiny. So he doesn't just... Yeah, so he doesn't just sit, he doesn't just sit back. He actually tries to do something. So I disagree with him on that.
Now, granted to him, this is a NPC talking point. They want men to step out of the way. They want white people to step out of the way. They want X people to step out of the way for Y minority or whatever, Y oppressed person or something. But that didn't happen in Star Wars. Now, that is an NPC talking point, but that's actually new to me in terms of cinematic projects and media.
Yeah, I think that's one of the... I can't remember who it was Dinesh D'Souza. He was having a conversation with some leftist guy at one of his talks, and he's like, are you prepared to give up your seat at the university for some other minority or for some other person? Are you prepared to give up your house or whatever? And like, because that's what you're preaching. So if that's what you're saying, then why aren't you living it? So
it's kind of like how J.K. Rowling came out and all these other celebrities came out and said you should house illegal immigrants or something in your house.
Yeah.
And then they refuse to house people in their homes. They house immigrants in their homes, and they're not just huge mansions, but multiple huge mansions.
Yeah. In the final scene of the movie Mad Max Fury Road, after tossing the dead body of the tyrannical father, Max presents the female lead to the people, who clamor for her, and Max then gets off this escalating elevator in order to let all the feminine characters ascend to replace the toppled authority.
Okay, I have a huge problem with this explanation. First off, most of the main characters or the secondary characters in Mad Max Fury Road are females. They're not feminine.
Especially not Furiosa.
Yeah, she's pretty butchy. I mean, she's
masculine. She's masculine.
I mean,
you can replace her with a man, and there'll be really no change.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 of the escaped brides, and then they meet up with the female splinter group that they're all just a bunch of snipers or whatever. Mm-hmm. So most of the people in the story are women, but they're not really feminine. Maybe the brides are slightly feminine, but they're pretty badass too. Like someone's scared, one is pregnant, etc. But Furiosa is not feminine. She is a female, and she's the lieutenant, or she's the ex-lieutenant, a general of Joe's war parties or whatever. Mm-hmm. So she would naturally be the next person on the hierarchy to be in charge.
And that's also keeping in mind that Mad Max is not I'm going to settle down kind of guy. He's a wanderer. If they had written him to stay and rule this city, that would have been someone clearly who does not understand Mad Max, because he is not I'm going to settle down kind of guy. If that were to happen, I think a lot of Mad Max fans would have been disappointed.
Well, even if he went up with the elevator with them, he'd eventually just take off. He wouldn't stay.
Yeah, he wouldn't stay. But that's so Mad Max to not stay. But it's getting into the movie. But I can see where he's coming from with this instance. Yeah, I guess you could see it as the women being risen up as the leaders. I didn't see it as women being risen up as leaders. I'm seeing it as Furiosa.
Yeah,
because she's the one who earned it. She knows what to do. She is the most proactive. She's the one that stole the truck and snuck out all the wives and everything. So she is very capable and very smart and able to lead a band. And keep in mind that Mad Max did fight Furiosa when they first met, and he did win. He beat her, and he took all the stuff he wanted from them and left them in the desert. It's not that she was able to defeat Max. Max is a superior fighter. They kept that relatively realistic because it was just a head-to-head man versus woman. She is able to, she can fight him. She can hold her own for a while, but Max was eventually able to overpower her and outsmart her.
Right. And if you ever, I don't know if you guys remember from, was it 3-4 years ago when I saw this movie, the blogs, all the entertainment people, they were like, oh, this is such a feminist powerhouse. This is a great movie. It's like,
No,
yes, there
it's
are
not.
women, yes, but there's nothing feminist about it. There's nothing,
Yeah, there's women in it. Okay, that's about it.
yeah, I
There's
mean,
nothing feminist about it.
I don't get what the oppression here is. It's just you're in a post-apocalyptic world. Like if you watch Mad Max 2, I was just talking about this before the stream started. There's a kid with a steel gauntlet that throws a steel boomerang that cuts people's heads off, or lodges them in their heads. Like these wild, crazy people.
Yeah, Mad Max is fantastic. It's a fantastic franchise.
Yeah,
And I would argue that Thunderdome is probably at least maybe about the same amount of quote unquote feminist as this movie, because it has Tina Turner being in control of Bartertown,
Right.
more or less. More or less. Who run Bartertown? It's just her. It's just a political struggle between her and I think Master Blaster.
yes,
I think it's
yeah.
Master Blaster. So, but she is still in control of most of the town. She still has incredible power, and I think she has a literal male slave in there. Just
Well,
plays her saxophone.
There's lots
But
of
so-
crazy things in Mad Max.
Yeah, to me, that would be more what these people would interpret as feminists. Now, this is just a tough woman fighting. And I'm not really sure about the brides. They don't really do much. Yeah, they can hold out a little bit, but they're more trouble than they are of help. She's just dragging them along.
Right.
Furiosa being the most capable with one arm. Remind you that she only has one arm, so yeah, she's pretty good. It's not really feminist. She's just a strong character.
Yeah, and most of the characterization of Max is sort of non-existent. He's not much of a main character. It's about the scenarios he gets involved in and all
He's
these
just a powerful, stoic, pulpish character.
and all the weird characters that are around him sort of bring the narrative with them, and then he just keeps going. And then that's what Max is. He's a vehicle for a narrative which is about other people. Or other
It's actually a trope that you can get in some of these franchises. That take Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name. He is you don't really see where he's coming from most of the time. He's kind of stoic. He's kind of a mystery. You're not really interested in the man with no name. You're interested in the people around him, the craziness that surrounds him. For example, the good, bad, and the ugly. You have the craziness of Tuco, and then you have the personable, maliciousness of Angel Eyes, and you have all the craziness of the Civil War just raging around him. But because the main character is so stoic, you're able to see and appreciate the craziness that surrounds him even more. This also happens in Yojimbo. This also happens in, if anyone has read Lone Wolf and Cub, that's pretty much what happens in Lone Wolf and Cub. It's the main character is stoic. You don't really see much into his personality most of the time. Now, you do eventually, but most of the time it's just him being stoic, and then you can appreciate the wackiness and the craziness that happens around you, around that guy. So this is a common trope. So that's the type of character that Mad Max is.
I would say it's also part of episodic storytelling, very similar to how Star Trek works. It's not about the actual personalities of the characters that we know and love, that we see every week. It's the scenarios that involve the weird technology they've never seen, the weird aliens. That's the storytelling. It just happens to be Mad Max is in movie format. So it has a 3-part lineage. There's only 3 original Mad Maxes, and they made the 4th one 4 years ago. So yeah, that's all. To me, it's just random episodes that happen to be. I mean, they could have done a second one. I think that would have been smart. I don't know what would have taken them long, or taken them so long to do it, because the first one was such a hit. So yeah, too bad though.
In these movements, one sees the raw power play that is happening in the cultural narrative. It is not about parody, about equality and all those virtues. Rather, the current social move appears as revolutionary. It's about inverting the traditional hierarchy, putting it upside down. At first glance, there are those who might cheer to see such a replacement. It's about time that women make room for themselves. But things are not always what they seem. By simply filling masculine social tropes with female characters who embody those very tropes, it might not so much be an elevation of the feminine that we're seeing, but rather a blind attachment to masculine qualities as the ones that truly matter. As if being on top, as if being physically strong, a warrior, and a leader is somehow more virtuous than beauty.
Well, I don't know how you're saying beauty is virtuous. And if you're talking about what virtue is in the classical sense, we're talking ancient Greeks. We can go back to Plato's regimes. Virtue, what he based off the regimes is that the greatest virtue is being wisdom would be the number one regime, which is the republic or his his aristocracy of the philosopher kings. And when you're talking about courage or strength or military might, that is the second regime. That is timocracy, or rule by honor or rule by courage. So it's all the virtues minus wisdom. So
Right.
that's why we see characters like Alexander the Great and these other figures as these really bigger than life people, because they may not have been the philosopher warrior kings, but they were certainly warrior kings of some capacity. And that was the virtue of courage and honor. So how that compares to beauty, though, that's a totally different thing. I don't think beauty is a virtue. I don't think we can.
I think it's usually considered a virtue when compared to women. It's not really so much a virtue in men. It's respected in men that they be handsome. Like we usually expect our male heroes to be handsome. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's more valued that women be physically attractive if they're heroes.
Yeah, it's really dependent on his definition of virtue and what he's trying to say. So
Yeah, it is valued, but I'm not really sure if
sure, yeah, there's an attractive thing by very nature. It is attractiveness, beauty, but in what sense? And we can't just start comparing apples and oranges. That's why I don't want to. That's why I go back to classical definitions, because that's how I learned them. So if you think beauty is a virtue, great. In comparison to what, and how does that relate to military might? I'm not sure.
Than the caring and intimate connections of our private realm. There have been very powerful female characters who embody the feminine in profound ways. For example,
Yeah, but Furiosa embodied the masculine in feminine ways or in masculine ways. So again, that's not really a problem per se, so long as her role in the story works out. And she was kind of I guess she was also a main character. I think Max and her were the two main characters of the story. Max is always the third wheel. He's always along for the ride.
and he's always the guy who just stumbles into a bigger situation.
Yeah, and he sort of helps out because he's tough and he's rough and tumble, and he gets through it and tries to right a wrong if ever he wants to. He's not the good guy. He's kind of like the lonesome. What's the?
He's like a wandering anti-hero.
Yeah, he just sort of just goes wherever he likes. Get out of my way. I believe in freedom and this and that, but he doesn't really care what's going on. He's just, I just want my gas. Get me out of here.
And whatever I have to do to get the gas, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Tell me who to kill. I'll kill him, and just as long as you give me the gas.
Yeah, there's
or
a
whatever I
scene
need.
in the movie where he has the sawed-off shotgun. It doesn't fire, and he's like, "Ah, shit! Damn. Now I gotta talk to this person."
Now, there's one thing here I wanted to point out is that he used Mad Max, which is an action movie, and he's using comics which should be anyway heavily action oriented. Now, when you have action movies and things that require things that follow adventure and action, that sort of thing, usually things that appeal to the male genre, the male audience, so genres that appeal to the male audience. Usually you're going to have to need a main character that exudes masculine traits, aggression, strength, the ability to, the stamina, that sort of thing. So it's, of course, masculine traits are going to be respected and highly desired in heroes, regardless of gender. If you're going to watch a movie or make a movie that is going to be centered around action, now then you can have a movie like something more cerebral, something that takes a lot more thinking. I mean, Game of Thrones could be an example of this, where it's not just about the fighting. In fact, it's not really about the fighting at all. At least it shouldn't be until the very end when they mess that up. But it requires more about thought and diplomacy and outmaneuvering someone else. Now that is where feminine qualities might come into play. Where in fact, I can point you to an example. Remember when Joffrey or that what's her name that I think the granddaughter of that the old lady, uh, the granddaughter of the old lady. I forgot. I think she was the ruler of Highgarden, and her granddaughter came into Joffrey and she manipulated him with her feminine wiles. Now, this is actual manipulation. She was able. There's a guy who did a video on how and why
Oh,
this
Marjorie
manipulation worked
Tyrell.
on Joffrey. Yeah, yeah, Tyrell, the Tyrells. That's it. And she actually psychologically manipulated Joffrey into liking her, so that they could get married and they could be united. That is where feminine traits. That scenario is where feminine traits will be highly respected in a scenario where it is more the focus is more on diplomacy and relationship building and that sort of thing. And that's why Cersei also was a pretty formidable enemy because she was also able to traverse the landscape of politics.
Yeah, I think the focuses of those kinds of stories, at least Game of Thrones, was war and politics and all the political maneuvering to prevent war and all the fools that don't know what they're saying that ends up causing war, which is kind of the start of the first episode or the death of not the first episode. Was it death? Was that the death of? No, it was the end of the season actually of Stark, of the main Stark. That's what caused all this to occur because of one crazy king's desire to eliminate his enemy, as opposed to realizing, oh, I'm about to marry into the family. Probably not a good idea to chop off the head of the family. Yeah.
Probably not. Like that's why in Game of Thrones, in a parallel to Game of Thrones, you could have a show that's just about wars and people fighting. But Game of Thrones is mainly about the politics, with fights, with wars and battles being kind of tertiary. These kind of things that happen things that have to happen that as a result of the political maneuvering. That's why when you have that instance of where the whole battle happens off screen with Rob when he captures Jaime Lannister.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter that we didn't see the battle. What happens is the result. What matters is the result, and what matters is the fact that we know it happened and we know what the results were of that battle. It's not necessarily the battle itself that's important in the context of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, if we were set up for a battle or a story that we know the meaning behind each side and why they're fighting, then it's great to see that in action, saying, "Oh, this is the guy who's going to go fight for what he believes in because we know what he believes in," as opposed to, "Oh yeah, he captured Jaime Lannister because they were smarter than him." Like we don't need to see that. There's no need for that.
And then when they started to emphasize more battles. That's kind of where the people started getting upset about where the show was going.
That's what happens when you have a lot of money and you don't know what to do with it. And you're like, we could use the books, or we could have a really simple fight scene for 10 minutes.
Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings has been a perfect type. She disarms men by her depth of vision, by her insight, by her beauty, her grace. And even in her terrible moment, she shows us the terror of the feminine, that she could be as terrible as the dawn, as treacherous as the sea. All will love her and despair.
I don't think that's the terror of the feminine. In that particular scene, she's just saying, what if I had all this power?
The power of the ring would give her. Actually, it's the power of the ring would corrupt her, and then that would make her the tyrant version of herself. That's what the ring does, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's specific to being a female, so I don't know exactly what the big deal of what he's talking about there. Not to say that Galadriel is a bad character. Obviously, she's a great character, but
he is right on the fact that she does have those qualities where she can disarm men with her grace and her beauty and her wisdom and all that stuff. That is part of the. That's an instance where the feminine traits would be highlighted, not so much the masculine traits, because instances of diplomacy.
Yeah, no, I mean I wouldn't call that even a female trait. I just call that intelligence and patience and all the other virtues, if you want to call them that, of the softer side of man. So, yeah, it's unless he defines specific traits, like he said, caring and gentleness. Like, okay, fine, that's fine, but you're not going to get much caring and gentleness in Mad Max. You're not going to get much caring and gentleness in Wonder Woman when she's, slaughtering Germans. It's just like, yeah, good. It's a wartime. It's a wartime story. There's battles. There's fighting. Context. I mean, a man can appear feminine and a woman can appear masculine. There's nothing wrong with that depiction. It's whether it's blatant, whether that's the only meaning to be had, whether there's no other meaning in the story at that point. That's when we start having problems.
Such a character is far more engaging and encompassing than simply making the female character a feisty badass who, it turns out, is a better fighter than all her male counterparts.
Okay, so this is a scene in
Is that Drake?
yeah,
That-
Uncharted. So
Uncharted, yeah.
I
Uncharted.
don't know Nadine, but again, if there's a backstory with Nadine where she is like a jujitsu master or Drake is hurt here or injured, there's nothing wrong with a woman throwing around a man if they're properly trained. I've seen kids throw around adults that were properly trained in judo. So it's not unheard of. Again, there's nothing wrong with any depictions of women being strong, provided we understand what's going on and we can believe it. So in that scene, I was like, I can sort of believe it. I mean, it's kind of hard with the fast camera angles. So maybe she was, bending his wrist or tripping him up, and obviously throwing him through a window is a bit unbelievable. But it's a video game. It's about the whole story about Drake is about him surviving ridiculous scenarios and climbing and jumping over buildings and jungles and Aztec whatever, and just surviving through all that. So you'd want characters to do that to Drake, and I don't think Nadine is that major a character for that to be essential to her backstory, but it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, in the hands of a good writer, or at least a decent writer, that trope usually works. But in the hands of like an NPC writer, the trope is always annoying because you always, if there's a woman in the room, she's going to be able to beat up the main character, and you can't have your main character be humiliated and emasculated at every turn. You can have it happen every once in a while.
Yeah.
But if he steps up to everyone and he's just destroyed by everyone because she's a woman, he's not really main character material.
Yeah, you need to show an escalation of growth. You can't just fail at every turn. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like fail, 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 fail. And you get the climax. Oh, he won. It's like, what? How? When? Where did he learn? How did he get there? So we want to see failures of an accumulated rate along with his strengths. So you see a crossroads happen at the climax where it's like, this is what I need to do. Or right before the climax where they actually development towards their character arc. And they say, this is my weakness. I can now eliminate it. Or I can keep on to it, or hold on to it, and just keep going the way I am. You can die. You can become a statue. You can whatever. So it really depends on the context of what the weakness of the hero is. And as we know, Drake survives falls. He climbs. This is not a big deal. So you need some context behind Nadine, though, to make a proper judgment.
Yeah, and it's a video game. Of course, you can survive
Yeah, exactly.
all this stuff without even a scratch.
Character
There he is. He's just hanging on right there. Last scene. Just like, woo.
characters like Galadriel, but also the wonderful and rich female heroines we find in Miyazaki films, take into account the whole range of human emotions and activity, which is primordial in understanding what it means to be fully human, male and female.
Okay, I don't really understand what it means to be fully human, let alone to be male and female. Again, I said that there are masculine characters who can be feminine, or female characters that can be masculine. But that doesn't mean you're fully like. I hate these big generic philosophical terms like truthfully or love, or like truly this or completely not that. It's not good rhetoric to use these broad terms, especially when you talk about Miyazaki films. This is a fantasy. It's like this little girl is fully human because she talks to spirits and gets on the backs of Chinese dragons. You're like, no.
She is written very well. She acts like a girl would act, like a normal girl would act in that situation, whether she's suddenly thrust from
Sure.
the real world and then filled with a world filled with people turning into pigs and ghosts and
Yeah.
stuff. So she's characterized very, very, very well. But he is he is. If you take the full context of Spirited Away, he is correct in the fact that it's not a story centered around fighting and all that stuff. It's Chihiro kind of maneuvers the landscape by being herself, by offering friendship where she can, and offering love, having using her. I guess she just goes through it using her friendship.
Yeah, I know, but
She,
take the context of, again, Mad Max. I could believe a tough girl is a tomboy in that scenario, and
right. Oh yeah.
I can believe a group of women are a bunch of snipers that are living out in the desert to survive.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's believable. That's the number one quality we need in these men and women, is that, oh, is there example of whatever scenario they're in, whatever conditions their life has taken them, believable? Yes or no? If it is, boom, great. Okay, Holdo, we don't know who this person is. She's come out of nowhere. She's bashing one of the main characters. We're like, who the hell is this bitch? And that's that. That's Holdo. There's nothing else to her.
She's just there to have purple hair.
And then she breaks the lore of Lightspeed, and you're like, okay, this is not good. Like, that's the only reason for her to be there. And he's like, this is horrible writing, horrible writing. Not because she's a woman, but we have to guess that was the point of the director and the writer, because they wanted women when there were plenty of other characters to do that. You know, they could have gotten Leia to do that. They couldn't gotten what's his name? It's a
They should
trap.
have gotten General Akbar.
Akbar would have been
They
perfect.
should have gotten General Akbar. Akbar should have done it. If anyone's going to sacrifice themselves in a fleet against fleet battle,
Exactly.
it should have been Akbar. He earned it.
He would have been, this is my goddamn ship. You're not taking it. And he wouldn't have gone to light speed. He would have gone to like ramming speed.
He would have been like this. I don't know if you remember this DS9 episode where what's his name? Core. He goes off on a ship with a skeleton crew and faces down like several enemy ships at once and holds them off so that his allies can escape. I can imagine General Akbar being like that, just holding off an entire fleet all by himself and having his allies escape, or something to that nature.
That would have been a really fulfilling ending.
And I know for a fact that if that were to have taken place, everyone, all the Star Wars fans in theater probably would have stood up and clapped or something, something to that effect.
Yeah, I would have been pretty happy. You didn't realize he was in the movie until he wasn't, and you're like, what? That was Akbar,
Oh
really?
yeah, that was Akbar. Like if he said, what if he had set a trap for him? He's like, his last words were like, and the first order was like, what's happening? And then they show an up close picture of Akbar, and he goes, it's a trap, and he destroys them all, sacrificing himself. That would have been awesome, but he didn't get that, unfortunately.
Once we see, though, the pattern of replacement, we can then begin to understand the storytelling choices made in recent movies as soaking in an ideological zeitgeist, we could say.
Okay, it's one thing to be ideologically driven. It's another thing to imply that there's a zeitgeist around multiple movies in multiple genres of different franchises, that all the writers are like, hey, you'll be really good if we get a flat female character bossing men around. You know, it's like, wait, why? Why would you do that?
I think it'd be a good idea. I can see where he's coming from with the replacement thing, but I don't think it was an intentional pattern. I think it was just a bunch of individual directors wanting to follow up on this ideology, and it's just by coincidence and accident that there's a whole pattern of replacement. I think because I don't think they're that smart. I don't think they're that Machiavellian. I just think that okay, I'm gonna control this picture. I'm woke and from Hollywood and like my lattes with plenty of soy in it or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm going to make a picture. I'm going to have this established franchise. I'm going to make the next movie of this established franchise, but I'm just going to replace everything with women. I think this is a bunch of individuals wanting to do the same thing, and I'm not really sure if it's a replacement. The replacement part was intentional.
Yeah, take the same thing with Ghostbusters 2000, whatever it was. Imagine it wasn't all women. It was just different male characters. It would still be a pretty bad movie. Like the slapstick probably wouldn't work. The whatever off the cuff comments or whatever the directing decision was, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah,
So you can't just blame because they're women. It's just like, well, that's the obvious stupid thing because we heard it from the director's mouth, but they didn't even realize what they were doing. It's like, hey, maybe you should, quality control this, pass it by some writers, pass it by some comedians. Like, this is not good? Maybe. It doesn't really matter whether it's men or women. It's whether it's a good story, the good characters, and good pacing, and good plotting, and good scenarios, and good dialogue. We want quality in our work. We don't just want men for the sake of it, or women for the sake of it.
So, for example, it would not have been difficult to have Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi return to the Resistance in order to lead one last grand show of heroism before passing on. But having him appear only as a mirage cut that hope short and crystallized the ascension of Rey.
I don't think Rey needed any help to be Rey. I think she was already God.
At this point, she had beaten up Luke Skywalker, so
Yeah.
that was pretty solidified. It was a good solidification.
Yeah, I don't think bringing. I mean, yeah, if Luke actually did something, that would have been great. But
Yeah. He didn't. He just stood there.
he didn't, and then we're not. And he didn't help anyone. He's like, by the way, I'm going to go do this. You guys go run it. He didn't say anything like that.
That was an incredibly stupid, like beyond your average stupid. This was like a whole new level of stupid for him, for those writers to do this to Luke. And they couldn't give Luke this one last awesome, like a scene where he stands alone, the hero of the galaxy stands alone against an army of the First Order and destroys them all or something. They couldn't even let him do that. He just stood there because he's a mirage, and then he died, and that's it. That's all that happened. But that's more of the movie, not really more of politics. I think it was more of bad writing.
Yeah, we look at like every scene of that movie is just a garbled, disconnected mess. Not in the the B movie. Oh, how did they get here? Sort of scenario, but it's like, why are they here now, doing this now? Why shouldn't they have done that? Why couldn't they have retreated over there? Why couldn't they have talked about this previously? Like, there's all these scenarios that make no sense, and the thrust of every scene is like, this is dumb. This is literally one of the worst ideas you could do. Like, let's everyone just run outside with rifles that can't shoot anything, that can't damage anything, in the hopes that we'll stop a TIE fighter.
And Leia is like the worst general ever or something, because she should. I think they would have had a better chance of surviving if they all just held up inside that base.
Yeah, and Holdo was bashing Poe because it was his plan. Well, who do you think approved the plan? Leia. She's in charge of everything. It's like, oh, the Holdo or the Poe plan to stop the dreadnought. It's like, Leia went, yeah, go for it. It's like, you blame the person on top. They're the guy overseeing everything. They approve everything.
Who had already been shown to not need a man.
Stop taking my hand!
And is constantly shown upstaging the already established masculine character.
You're afraid.
It's not because
That was pretty annoying.
It's not because they're men. It's because she's a Mary Sue, and
Yeah.
everything around her is an amoeba. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, pretty much. It doesn't matter if Han Solo could have been a woman; it would still be the same. She's not really emasculating him. It's more like they're trying to upgrade her. Like they're trying to hold her up to pedestal while downgrading everyone else. It doesn't matter who is around her. She's a Mary Sue. Whoever's going to be around her is going to be at like half health and half the IQ. So that's just how it goes with a Mary Sue like Rey.
Yeah, and there is, of course, you can make the argument that all the men in The Last Jedi are incompetent or what have you, but you can easily say, well, that's because we have Rey and Holdo and Leia, and they're amazing, and there's no opportunity for the men to do anything because there's no need for them to do anything. So it's like, okay, well, you could argue that, but you're still talking about extremely poorly put together scenes. So you could blame this and that and a combination of these things. You're not wrong. It's just that's not the best explanation, that because they're female. It's just not.
Yeah, this is one of the instances I think he's reaching, because she's not there emasculating men for the sake of emasculating men. And it's something that could totally happen. in the hands of an NPC writer, but I don't think it did. I think it was just she's a Mary Sue, and whoever is around her is going to be stupid and incompetent at everything.
Right.
And I'm gonna make mention of that because this happens to an excruciatingly, annoyingly high degree in Force Awakens, and I'll point it out in my next video. But yeah, it's more of the lines of she being a Mary Sue rather than an attack on men.
I bypassed the compressor.
Now, I could have analyzed many movies in order to give a detailed symbolic understanding of what is happening. But I thought that one scene from the recent movie Wonder Woman encapsulate the structure most succinctly. So the scene is happening in a village. The movie has already set up that this village is a kind of microcosm of what is happening more broadly in the war. So after clearing the village of all the enemy soldiers, there's still this sniper shooting people from the church tower, which looms above the center of the village.
Okay, just a little note on when she kicked that soldier out of the window. Did anyone else see that as kind of like someone clicked on her image and just dragged her outside of the building with the guy? It didn't look like a kick that would do that. It kind of looked like she just tapped it. She just kind of went into a pose, and someone used a mouse to drag her image outside of her window.
She had I thought it was like she had like a cable tapped to her waist and they just pulled her.
Yeah, something like that. It didn't look like she jumped and kicked. It just kind of looked like she just went outside through some outside power.
Yeah, this is kind of the issue when you have superpowers in live action in films, especially in the prequels, where that's like they can use force powers to move really fast or jump really far, but sometimes they don't. And it's like, how do you properly depict a superhero that can fly or hover or whatever, and they choose not to because they're people and they have to act? And it's kind of like, why aren't they doing that all the time? Is there like a need not to? Do they get tired? Is like some reason? Like there's a joke about how Wonder Woman is essentially bulletproof, but she uses her bracelets anyway.
And she uses bracelets and shields and stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I've never seen her with a shield, but I've seen her with the bracelets, the bulletproof bracelets.
Yeah. So can she actually get hit by bullets? And if so,
As far as I know, in the original incarnation, she was pretty much human. She's an Amazon. They're not like the classical Amazons, where they're good fighters and they're women, but they're not really like superhuman. They can be killed, they can be shot and everything. That's why she needed those bracelets in the first place. And I think her biggest weakness was being bound by a man. So if she's bound by a man, she loses her powers, I believe.
okay, because in previous or more recent ones, she's born from clay. She's the powers of the goddess Athena and the god of war and whatever. She can fly. She has superhuman powers. She has all these abilities. So I was always curious why she had all this weaponry. And obviously she was trained, but she became elevated after she passed all the trials. She was selected to be the next guardian or representative of Themyscira. Mm-hmm. So I wish I knew more about the lore, because it's always hard to grasp what is her power level and is she using it well, and that sort of thing. When we watch One Punch Man, it's like, okay, he can do anything with his fists. Plus, he's rather indestructible. He's rather quick, but he's not like super fast compared to other people. He is extremely fast when he wants to be, but that's because is the nature of his writing, is that he has to be broken when he wants to, as opposed to he'll just run really fast now. And now he'll run a little bit faster. Now he'll punch a little bit harder, that sort of thing. So
he can run really fast. It's not like the Flash fast sort of thing. He still needs a ride places if he wants to get there in a timely manner.
Yeah. So with
with
Wonder Woman, it's like maybe she needs some armor, maybe she needs some this or that. It wouldn't hurt, but we have to figure that out. Whether the bullets can, like we see when Superman Returns, the bullet literally hits his eyeball.
Yeah, and just dents.
She goes. The bullet just gets destroyed. He doesn't even blink. Like that. That's how much Superman does not give a crap about what's happening with bullets. He's like, yeah, they're bullets. Whoop-de-doo.
The fact that the sniper is at the top of the church is very important in terms of symbolism.
Okay, no, it's not. He just previously stated that the church is the highest point of the town. So naturally, a sniper would go there for the positional advantage.
And it usually is in these in World War II. What some of the best sniper nests were towers, and a lot of churches have really tall peaks and towers and things like this. Is part of the architecture.
Right. So unless there's
they're usually the type of buildings that would have tall, very tall parts to them.
right. So unless there's a specifically blatant imagery of whatever the symbolism of a church is, like the cross or Jesus or angels or the crucifixion, whatever the story is in a church, unless it's directly tied into a character or a meaning of the symbol, then this guy's going to say whatever the hell he wants. And that's the problem with interpreting things. You need to have symbols that are literal, that are directly pointing to a character and to a meaning. That's why I described him as having a 3-part relationship: the symbol, the character, and the meaning or meanings. So he could say whatever he likes, and you're like, okay, sure.
Just as we can understand the sniper in the very vertical tower shooting his rifle down at the people below as a form of tyrannical masculine power.
No, sir. A sniper at the top of a tower is not a form of tyrannical masculine power. That is ridiculous.
I don't think so. I mean, isn't he a Nazi? I think it's just the power of a tyrannical government or a fascistic power that the guy's a symbol of.
Any person who's a sniper who's trying to take over a town and suppress it would get to the highest point if he's a sniper and use that as a vantage point and be a scout. Like, that's just logical. It's not about if it was an American, he represents democracy and power and the American ways. Like, no.
I mean, she's working with men. I mean, is this if you're working with just women, then I could see that. If it's just women versus one male in a tower, I could kind of see that. But she's working with men. I mean, I don't see a direct link to her doing this to topple the patriarchy or anything like that. I mean, he's not being this is a Nazi sniper. He's not. I don't think he's being held up as a symbol of male power or anything like that.
People in the chat are telling me that it's actually World War One. So okay, yeah, before the rise of Nazism.
Okay, so it's World War One. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what he's going on about, but he is reaching here. He's really, especially with this masculine, like, whoa, dude.
So it's not tyrannical at all then? Is it because if Germans in World War One weren't the Nazis then? They were just another force in the war. They just the side that lost. So it's not. It's even less of an argument if he's not a Nazi.
Yeah.
We don't have to be Freudian to notice that the incapacity of Charlie, right, their own sniper, to take a shot himself, is an image of the flip side of tyrannical power. That is, it is a form of male impotence.
Wait, what?
What?
Yeah.
The flip side.
The sniper is their coward. I don't know. Male impotence.
The flip side of tyrannical male power is male impotence.
I mean, I guess the flip side of strength would be impotence,
What?
but I'm not really sure if that would play here. Is this guy like a? I don't even know.
Would it be female weakness? Would that be the flip side? I don't. Like...
I mean, I could see cowardice. He could be a coward and incompetent, but it's not really a trait of a gender. It's more like just a character flaw.
And you're in a war, and you're a sniper, and you're trying to take out another sniper, and he has a better position than you. It's like, well, yeah, you're at a disadvantage.
Sniper versus sniper is pretty scary. It's a pretty scary scenario to be in. You have a super chat? Let me see here. Coolman229. This dude is really thinking too hard about this. It's not that deep, fam.
Yeah, it's a superhero movie in World War One. So, Not sure. Yeah, again, if he showed us the symbolism, then we could actually look at the symbol itself and say, okay, what is the meaning there? But all he said was he's in a church and it represents male totalitarian power. Like what? Where is that coming from?
So the solution, which appears suggested by Steve Trevor, is for the men to get under the steel shield and prop up Wonder Woman. Now, the mechanics of the situation did not need the men to do that. We had already seen Wonder Woman leap up at least that high and escalate stone buildings. But it was important that the men lift her up, just as it was important to have that escalating platform.
Okay, now this is reaching. Okay. This is, to me, that seems like an instance of these male soldiers, these strong male soldiers, probably making a platform to help her because she needs allies. It seems like it's like a humbling moment. It looks like a moment of her needing the help of allies that she's been fighting with to get her where she needs to be, other than them just being a symbol of men raising up women instead.
Yeah, and that tower is like, I don't know, 6 stories around there. And she was seen in the previous scene jumping a 2-story building or a 3-story building. So it's like, yeah, maybe she could scale it really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is the problem with superhero movies. What do you do with all the non-superheroes, especially in a war? You have to have them be involved. You have to have them do something. So if they want to prop up their ace in the hole, they want to prop up Wonder Woman, jumping up whatever, it's like, why not? It's not the best strategy, but they get to do something. They're behind or they're underneath a bulletproof steel whatever plate. It's inventive, it's involved, and it gets people. Everyone's working together. That's kind of how I saw that scene as not necessarily propping up Wonder Woman so she could jump off the platform they're making. That's kind of silly.
Yeah, if Wonder Woman were Rey, she wouldn't need that. She would just jump up there.
Well, he compared it to Mad Max. I'm just like, what is?
This is totally different. This is, I mean, even if I took it for granted that okay, he's maybe, even I said he's right about them raising up the female characters in Mad Max. This is 2 totally different things. This is not them holding up Wonder Woman as the next leader or something. This is them making a platform so that their ally can get a boost and she can go where she needs to be. That's what soldiers do. They help each other. This seems like something that would happen in any sort of war movie. Men getting together to help another ally do something so that they can all go home. That would be different even if I accepted this proposition that this raising of the platform in Mad Max was an instance of them raising women as the next leaders or something. And it is really connect.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with actually this scene as a piece of cinematography. It looks great, and it showcases, Furiosa is probably going to be the next leader. That's great.
To me, it symbolized triumph.
Yeah.
Triumph that we obliterated the tyrannical, and we're now installing someone who is hopefully less tyrannical
in this horrible world. Yeah. So that is a good thing. Whereas I guess it's also a good thing in the previous movie, but they're totally different scenes.
Yeah. Not really. I mean, they're propping people up, but in 2 completely different ways. 2 completely different ways.
Platform in Mad Max to show the ascent in order to establish the new hierarchy. In the village scene, we can now easily understand the importance of the church tower as Wonder Woman, the goddess, but also the god killer, leaps up and destroys this masculine symbol of power, of tradition, of Christianity.
Okay. That sniper has a lot of symbolism. Holy crap. He represents Christianity, a masculine symbol of power. It's like, no, he's a guy with a gun on top of church.
Think I'm pretty. Now, this is coming from me, but I think he might be overanalyzing this bit. Tradition. I mean, if in the context of the movie, it was played up as if Christianity took a big part of the movie, and every instance of Christianity was seen as tyrannical or oppressive up until this point, and the Germans were depicted as completely destructive monsters and tyrannical at this point, and then tradition is heavily in the movie. of being monstrous and tyrannical to this point, then maybe I guess I could see that. But then it would be more like toppling tyranny to me than toppling masculinity and tradition and Catholicism on their own.
Yeah, he is. I can't. Just because it's a church doesn't mean it's Christianity or it's attacking Christianity or masculine values or male totalitarianism or whatever. It's just no. It's a war zone, and there's a guy with a rifle on top of a church. And it's really high up, and Wonder Woman doesn't know her strength yet, and maybe she doesn't know what to do, and she sees the opportunity that her friends are helping her with, and she's like, "Okay, great, I can do that. Cool," and she does it, and you're like, "Cool." And that's the scene, guys. That's it. There's nothing else there. I wish he would just like look at this scene right now. Do I see the destruction of the first floor of it or the top floor of a church, or is it like is she destroying male totalitarianism here? I don't like. What are you talking about?
It's like she destroyed the sniper nest. It's just what it looks
Yeah,
like.
I think she's a bit too powerful. Actually, that was a hell of a landing. It was just like I'll wipe out the entire floor. She could have thrown a car up there. It probably would have done the same thing. She'd have to jump up there herself.
Only to then appear in the rubble, above the villagers, replacing the tower itself, in order to receive the praise of the villagers.
And then she's suddenly on the bottom, and then she's like, "Oh wow, she's no longer above them." How about that imagery? How about that imagery? She's really a man of the people, but she's not a man. She's a woman. It's like, ooh.
And I think she's getting the love of the people because she just saved them, saved them all.
Yeah, I think anyone would get the praise if they stopped a sniper from killing their villagers. I mean,
Yeah.
that male sniper who was supposedly incapable and scared, if he actually got the shot off, they'd praise him. Would he be attacking the tyrannical totalitarian male power? Like I don't think so. He's just a soldier hitting another soldier with a bullet.
And the scene of the church tower is also the first of this repeating pattern in the movie, where we see Wonder Woman lifted up into the air in order to kill her enemies, culminating in taking the form of the cross and striking this masculine god of war and of tyranny from above.
Okay, hold on. Is Catholicism good or bad?
I guess it's good because she's attacking a pagan god. So, yay Jesus! I don't know.
Takes the sign of the cross and just smites paganism with it. But when she topples a church steeple, it's now is destroying Catholicism and tradition. So there's a little. I'm not sure which is which anymore now.
Yeah, and now she's like Thor. She summons lightning or something, and she can channel lightning, or I don't know. I'm not sure what's
it's always
going.
Ares. Why is always Ares the god of war? You know, Athena was the god of war too.
Yeah, Athena, war, wisdom, beauty.
I think she was the goddess of like of smart war.
Yeah. So it's one's a representative of the goddess of war, one's the actual god of war, and she summons lightning, and she can fly, and she can shoot lightning out of her body as well. So it's all kinds of power she's got. So you're like, oh, okay.
So I mean, this is the problem of going with symbolism, because you could see Wonder Woman smiting a masculine god of war, or someone else could see her take the sign of the cross and smiting a pagan god, and saying that this movie is now upholding the Christianity over all other religions or something.
Yeah, you could interpret it that way. So it's kind of this bad take this guy's doing, and he's just sort of running with it. You're like, dude, just whoa, slow down there. She just jumped up in the air. Maybe she was suspended by with the rigging on that people have when they're on those invisible lines in movies, and she didn't know what to do, so she just stretched her arms out. Maybe that was a director thing. Hey,
I think you're bad direction.
yeah, maybe it's like, yeah, make sure like you're flying, so stretch your arms out. Okay, it's like that's it. There's no symbolism. Oh, she looks like she's being crucified. Then she gets hit by lightning. It's like, well, which one is it? Is she getting crucified and then dying by lightning, or is she not getting crucified and now she's summoning lightning to use as a weapon? Like I didn't even know that was one of her powers. I didn't know she could do that. Is it like electromagnetism and her gauntlets are like?
I've never seen Wonder Woman do that
Yeah.
before.
I've seen in the Amalgam comics, she actually picks up Thor's hammer, and she then puts it down because, oh, this is so much power. I can't. This is not going to be a fair fight. And she's about to whip Storm's ass. So it's like she probably doesn't know what the hell she's doing with all this lightning. But hey, she has lightning powers because Wonder Woman.
With lightning bolts. And finally, when we see the enemy is defeated as the new day rises, Wonder Woman is then shown at the center of the new world she represents. A world that believes in love.
What?
Okay, come on.
What did they believe in Thor the Lightning Lord?
The new world she represents. I think it was just. It could be a shot just showing her off as the hero.
Yeah,
and
she won. The end.
this is usually the moment where you get to bask in the victory, and that's a pretty good way to bask in the victory cinematography. Visually speaking.
Yeah, there's a lot of shots of you have the thing you want to show off really quickly, and then you zoom out, or you have the action move away from the focus, so that the eye is tracking it. Like you show the players, or you show the audience what they want to see really quickly, and then you remove it, or you zoom out, or you take it away. Like that shot with the crane with the car and Furiosa's on it, and it just goes away and up and up and up and up. You're like, oh, where are you going? Like you want to
basking in the victory.
Yeah, you want to keep going up there, but it's time to go, and the scene is closing, and the curtain's falling, and Max has to go. It's that sort of immediacy of storytelling where we're not here to putz around. We got stuff to do. And in this scene, it's like, well, we're just gonna realize what just happened, and no one's too sure what the hell, because I don't know what the hell would be going on if I was a guy in the war and I saw this on an airfield. I'm like, okay, there was a girl, and then she was flying, and then she got hit by lightning, and then she shot lightning at someone, and then he exploded, and now the dawn just came, and I'm like, okay, what? Like, I wouldn't be thinking this symbolizes the love and care that this woman has. It's like, no, she just literally killed a god with lightning bolts.
As the German soldiers suddenly forget their violent ways and start to show camaraderie even with their former enemies.
Isn't that because...
Okay, that actually happened.
Yeah,
okay.
Isn't that because, though, that the god of war was causing people to be, like, war crazy?
Could be. That's a very good possibility. I think that might have what happened.
And now
this actually happened in World War One. If this is World War One, the soldiers actually had, at least for a time, more respect for one another. They kind of respect each other as fellow soldiers. There's even that the whole Christmas truce incident. But there was a much better sense of brotherhood between soldiers, even on opposite sides during World War One, than World War Two.
World War II is a very different thing to happen to the world. That's why they sort of saw it, or everyone saw it as the war to end all wars. This is the big thing against tyranny and European power mongering and all sorts of nasty stuff. Whereas the musings of that sort of were born out of World War One, for how the German people had to recuperate from all the I can't remember what was it, the Weimar Republic, all the crazy problems that happened as a result, the economic problems and how they had to solve that, all their paper money becoming worthless.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of problems that happened that caused World War II, and we can historically look at that. So people coming together on the battlefield after a war is, someone called the ceasefire, okay, great. Or, hey, we captured POWs. All right, we treat them with respect. Or, we bury our fallen. Like, we don't want to do this. No one wants to do this. So when there's a ceasefire, it's like, yep, okay, let's get the hell out of here.
Now, there are two things to understand. One is that we have to be careful. We have to be careful not to reduce our vision to polemics, as many have done. We cannot reduce the movies to this trope. We must not be blinded by politics. We always need to stay clear-headed enough to see the symbolic patterns appear where they appear. That is why I only occasionally mentioned all of this when analyzing many of these movies before, such as Logan or Gravity. Having said that, the second thing to understand is that we also need to see the pattern.
Okay, this is what I don't like. He's like, hey, you know what? Don't just see it in a vacuum. You know what? There's more going on. But we still have to acknowledge that what I saw was true. It's like, well, no, what you saw was your interpretation of what was true. And you didn't provide enough evidence. You just said, this is what I think is going on. Because love is what happens after you kill a god of war. It's like, no.
I mean, we could have seen examples. He could have provided examples of maybe the directors or someone who was on the projects. In some way, corroborating his assertions here, that maybe they had a anti-male bias or something when going into the movie, and then okay, I can kind of see that might be where they're coming from. So you have to connect the movie to what's going on outside the movie. And I think he even mentioned doing that.
I would step away from that because I don't like the intention. Like when you look at the T-shirt scene or shot of Kathleen Kennedy saying the Force is female, and you see those three other girls, you're like, okay, fine, that's kind of cute. But we have nothing else to fall back on in The Last Jedi to say, okay, why is this person here doing this stupid crap? Why is Leia a god? Why is Leia awake? Why is Leia now telling Poe the plan after they're in the plan? It's just like this is dumb. So you have to realize something else was going on for this crap to just bypass all the editors and go, okay, yeah, this is probably why it happened, because we have zero explanation for how this crap writing got in the movie. And that means everyone was of the same mind. All the editors, all the writers, all the screen directors, everyone else that was helping Rian Johnson do his thing. They approved it.
It's kind of like, I guess, what if he hired Tommy Wiseau, and then Tommy Wiseau was like, okay, I'm just going to, I'll take over this project. You just write, Rian Johnson. I'll take care of everything else. And Rian Johnson just goes off in the back and writes it. And Tommy Wiseau just took care of everything else. And they're like, that looks good to me. Let's go produce that thing.
I love George Lucas. He's great.
A great story, Luke.
It's not really Luke. He a hologram.
That's the only way I can come to figure out logically how something like The Last Jedi occurred.
Yeah, no, it's...
Tommy Wiseau had to be in control of the most important things. I like the guy. He's funny and entertaining and everything, but he's just, there's a reason why he was shown the way he was in the movie.
Yeah. So, yeah, we don't know. We can't say that's the reason why The Last Jedi is the way it is, but that's the only deduction we've got. Aside from everyone on the set was a moron, which I don't believe is the case. I think there were a lot of normal people on the set, key grips, gaffers, stagehands, all these people working, makeup, everything doing, there's a lot of people that we saw doing practical effects that were not in the movie. Mm-hmm. So they spent a bucket load of money on this. And I think because it was this massive production, everyone was like, wow, this is going to be amazing. We're getting paid. This is taking, 6 months or whatever. This is huge. They're going to love it. It's awesome, blah, 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 blah. No one was complaining, because why would they stop complaining to going to working on Star Wars? You're working on, that's an amazing credit to your name.
It makes it even sadder because someone apparently came along and said we need to cut all these practical effects so we can put in Canto Bight. We need to put in a Canto Bight scene in there. So cut all this out and start the Canto Bight stuff.
And that's on top of the stuff they cut out already. There was one of the interviews, not the interviews, the DVD. They made too much movie, so they had to cut back on how much film there was. That means they didn't even have a plan for what they were. That means they edited, they posted in post. They made a huge movie, and they cut it out. It's that's
but
crazy.
Left in Canto Bight.
Yeah, but they scored the entire scene with the fight scene with Plasma or Captain Plasma, whatever. They cut that out. They just didn't finish off all the CGI. They had other scenes where Rey was at the island and she was being trained to not she was, I don't know, she was going to fight someone in some part of the town, but it was all just a celebration. There were all of the scenes that they cut that they actually went through full production, and all they didn't do was the CGI on top of it, or the
So
finished CGI.
they cut out all of that. Someone went through
Yeah.
and said, "Okay, let's just cut out Ray getting trained. Let's let's cut out all these other important, essential things that could help make sense of this whole movie." But we have to leave Encanto bite.
Yeah.
We just have.
Yeah, it's like you want to plan a wedding and you go through their catalog. It's like, okay, I want this cake and I want this cake and I want this cake. Okay, I'll bake you that cake, and then they bake like 5 cakes. Like, wait a second, we don't need 5 cakes, we need 1 cake. You're like, oh, so it's like just that problem of being in control, having all this power and money, and everyone going, "Yep, let's do it. Yep, it's gonna be great.
good.
It's gonna be awesome."
Time was so is definitely in charge here.
So
It's a
back to
great
this
story.
Yeah, back to this gentleman. He's saying, you know what? Don't watch this in a vacuum. At the same time, we have to be aware of the symbolism, which is completely subjective to me.
And I can surmise that many of you have watched my past movie interpretations without noticing how this pattern reappeared in many of the movies that I chose.
Because we don't agree with you, and it's purely subjective on your part, sir. So, yeah, we probably won't.
You might not like if he had some evidence of like maybe what the intentions of the directors and the producers were, but at least it would help connect and boost what his points are.
Yeah,
That we can see where he's coming from a little bit better. Like maybe there's a feminist agenda behind Wonder Woman that we just don't see, and we can show evidence of that somehow.
yeah, and again, to do symbolism, you have to be repetitive. So we see a scene like in Man of Steel where Superman walks into the church. We see a shot of Jesus on the cross in the background, and it focuses on him in the foreground. And he actually talks to a priest about what to do. And he's looking for guidance. He's like, should I save these people? Should I go help them? Blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of good for symbolism, but it's not consistent. And if you want to have symbolism that's clear, you have to be consistent with that symbol. And pairing up the symbol with either foreshadowing or something that's going to happen that you know is based off a symbol, like the symbol of death or the symbol of peace or love or whatever is going to happen in the future. You're going towards the light. You're going towards happiness and a new life and da-da-da. Whatever you're doing, you have to show the contrast. You have to show it so it's obvious. You cannot just say, this is a church, therefore male totalitarian Christianity, power, whatever, and then uplifting female means destroying that. And you're like, no, dude, no.
I mean, I could see the church as being a symbol of light and goodness and a representation of peace and forgiveness, right smack dab in the middle of a war, where the sniper is perverting this symbol of goodness so that he can kill people.
Maybe if he was defacing the icons in the church, that would be
something like that.
That would be blatant. Yeah, be like, okay, this dude is evil. He's against because if you're talking about socialism, they were against religious imagery.
Oh yeah.
So it'd be all right. This is the dogma of that regime. This is how they think. And then you have the liberator or the freedom fighter in Wonder Woman, and she represents change, and she's a woman, and she's strong, yada yada.
I mean, it could have been a symbol. It could have been symbolic of how tyrants use things like religion to convince normal people to do terrible things. It's just it could be a whole number of things.
Yeah, but he just interpreted it his way, and you're like, not really, not exactly.
You see, if such a scene as this one in Wonder Woman had appeared on its own, and as some freak event, it might have been exactly that. It might have been an exception. But the recurring pattern is not only significant.
What recurring pattern? There's one in the church, and then there's one where she flies in the air and she outstretches her arms, and you think it's Jesus. That's it. That's all he's shown us. It's not a recurring pattern. That's not even related. A church is not Jesus. I didn't see it.
I might be referring to the pattern that the pattern of movies are doing.
Oh yeah.
But in that pattern he was talking about earlier, it was replacement. It was a pattern of male replacement by the female characters who take their place. Not really bashing symbolism, or bashing Catholicism and male tyranny or whatever. That's not part of the pattern that he presented.
Especially
on the
when
get-go.
you're talking about destroying a church and then becoming Jesus. It's kind of the opposite message within the same movie. You're either uplifting something or you're destroying it. So does Wonder Woman become Jesus? Is that she's replacing something? Is that what he's trying to get at? I really don't like this interpretation, understanding of movies, and then saying, you know what? Not only is this in this movie, it's a trend. You're like, okay, so there's another scenario in another movie where someone bashes a church and then becomes the savior? Is that like, okay, where is that? Like you have to prove that. You can't just say, well, women are replacing men. And you're like, really? So what's her name in Logan replaced Logan? Is that what you're getting at? Like, you really have to show examples of this pattern, and then we have to find it consistently, or else it's something. I mean, that would be a really strange pattern to see in movies, and you can't just say that in like one kind of movie, in one like the superhero genre, or in one kind of bad movie like with The Last Jedi, because you could point to anything in The Last Jedi being a pattern, because it's all crap. It's like this is a bad war movie. Therefore, look at this bad war movie that came out last year. You know, it's like, what? It just happens to have women in it. Oh no! It's like, no.
But it is often quite deliberate, and it is being cheered by certain factions of the political sphere.
Okay, now he's talking about Battlefield 5.
That one was pretty blatant. It was.
Yeah, but that's an entirely different topic. That's like.
Oh yeah, this one was clear. This guy is being saved by this woman on the battlefield that didn't really happen at that time, and she has like a missing arm and a spiked cricket bat, and it's just, and then she's on the cover. I don't know. It's just that one was pretty blatant.
That was I thought that was a pre-rendered.
It was a pre-rendered
example of multiplayer, and it was like, this is what multiplayer could be, and you're like, okay, where did this person come from? Why does she have a fake arm?
Yeah, and it was cool until that happened. She was just there just to be there. She was supposed to represent that, okay, women are these are coming into the battlefield.
Right.
Not only women, but she has a missing arm. She's an amputee. She's kind of like a political correctness chef salad.
Right, and then you talk about EA or the marketing person or the whatever public relations person talking about, if you don't want to buy our game, don't buy it. And it's like, they didn't buy it. And like, oh crap, we
didn't think you'd take us seriously.
we gotta do a 180 on that. And I'm not sure if anyone cares anymore about Battlefield 5, but that was.
If she were the main character, then I could see that working out. But she's not.
Yeah, it's
as far as I know,
it's this bizarre like logic. You know, he's just jumping around the way that what was it? World Class Bullshitters, or not world class? Just no bullshit.
Oh yeah, no bullshit.
He would just bring stuff up. You're like, this is just like what happened with EA and Battlefield.
I don't think this guy is as bad.
No.
Nearly as bad as no bullshit. But I could see the comparison. Yeah.
It's just, I don't like it when they're just reaching now. They're just like, hey, look at this. What happened with this video game series? What happened with this comic book series? What happened with this movie? It's like, sure, I guess.
And it is being cheered by certain factions of the political sphere. For example, in an article critiquing the latest Marvel Universe movie, Ant-Man and the
Well, that's Bustle. Who the hell cares about Bustle? Really? You know, there was all these people praising Wonder Woman in blogs. Oh, or even Wonder Woman.
So feminist.
Yeah, same with Mad Max. Even with Ghostbusters. You're always going to get those crazy people. So the thing is, you don't listen to them or you make fun of them because they're so stupid.
And making fun of them is probably the more moral thing to do.
Look at these people who have no evidence and are biased beyond belief.
And then mock them relentlessly.
Mock
that is your sworn duty as a moral citizen.
Yeah.
To mock these people relentlessly.
See, we do it because we're critics, so we like it. And we don't mind getting criticized for our opinions because that's the point. We're supposed to have an argument here. And that's why we welcome anyone who wants to bash us on Twitter. You better know what you're doing, guys, because we're really good at it. So we'll be happy to argue. We're going to be polite, though. We're not going to swear. we'll invite you on our show, and we'll talk about it because people like Vosh or whomever swear at their audience, and it's just like, okay, that's not.
I even let Vosh know, I'll go on your show.
Oh
But
God,
he's never responded to me. Like
that won't
I don't
happen.
know.
No. Vosh will not be able to.
Someone asked him like, "Hey Vosh, would you be willing to talk to him?" And I chimed into that Twitter thread because I was tagged in, and I said, "Yeah, I'll talk to him." Is that on the condition that he responds to what I actually say instead of what he fantasizes about me saying, and then he never responded to me. So I guess that's one condition too far.
Yeah, no. It's not. It's never gonna. Like, you imagine going through one of Lava Chan's videos, and he'd be like, "Well, this is where I disagreed with you," and it's like, "Yeah, why?" Because you're not feminist. It's like, what? No, it has nothing to do with the point we're making.
Andrew Clark, Wonder Woman represents the KKK because her cross attack is very reminiscent of KKK cross lighting practice.
Lighting
Okay.
practices. Oh, she
She is a. I haven't seen like what was that old paper called? Was it the Daily, the Daily something? Daily Stormer. The Daily Stormer. Like a white. I think it was just legitimately like a white supremacist sort of, like that sort of publication. I think if I remember correctly. I could see them like having this sort of symbolism, like having that take on it. And, yeah, that part where Wonder Woman became a cross and smote the god of war. That was clearly her supporting the KKK.
Oh, okay. That's fantastic. Okay. Yeah, so bustle, don't bother with these articles unless you want a good laugh. And when you can, just laugh at them on Twitter. I think it's the best place to get updates on news to make you have a good chuckle. So, yeah.
Wasp, in which this very pattern of supplanting and replacing is playing itself out. For example, notice the composition of the posters.
Oh, give me a break. I actually went to go see Ant-Man and the Wasp or Ant-Man 2.
I heard it was excellent.
I enjoyed it. It was a simple popcorn munching movie. Okay, the first one I didn't watch, but it was like a darker version because it's talking about how he is down on his luck and he finds his suit and he talks to the scientist who invented it. Da da da. This one's like he's trying to be a good dad, and there is a superhero called the Wasp, and she has a few more powers, and she's also working with that scientist and all the shenanigans that they get involved in, and it somehow ties into the Endgame scenario, which I haven't seen, and that was
It's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's a great movie. It is, however, awesome. I mean, it's not The Godfather or anything.
Yeah.
But it is filled with action. And if you don't think about how things go, if you don't think about the logistics and all that stuff about the movie, it's really great.
If you look at the actual poster on the right-hand side, she's looking up. She's the tallest person on the poster, but her superhero character's on the bottom right or the middle right, and the Ant-Man's suit or his helmet is on the top. So they both have prominent roles in the story. They both have a flirty, romantic rival relationship with each other. So there's nothing like it wouldn't matter if the Ant-Man was on top and she was on the it would make no difference. Absolutely no difference. So if you want to talk about composition of a movie poster, you could talk about the aesthetics of it. You could talk about the color scheme, the balance, the way your eyes go look at the thing. Very action. You could just tell, okay, this is a superhero comic or this is a superhero movie. So it tells the story very clearly on the image. Nothing to do with male or female roles or power fantasies. It's just these two characters. They're not overtly buff. They're not overtly physical. They're not too tall. It's kind of a comedy, actually. It's one of those funny, like if I were to watch one of like the Goonies in the 80s, this weird sort of movie. It's kind of like this weird sort of movie where
It's that Marvel humor that the franchise has kind of become known for. It got more humorous and the comedy became more the focus. I think, in my opinion, a little too much, especially when Thor Ragnarok. But yeah, it's I could see the comedic, this movie being comedic. I haven't seen this movie, but I would expect it to be comedic now that it's been produced by Marvel Studios.
Yeah,
It doesn't work in Star Wars though. I think they should
No.
just keep that out of Star Wars. Keep it far away from Star Wars. That weird LOL, so random humor.
Well, I don't like his examples of movie posters explaining whatever symbolism he's trying to go for. I don't get it. So, guys, watch the movie, make your opinion. Try not to read into it. Okay? These
I think,
movies are not that deep.
I think that's what he would want too. Is you make your own opinion.
Oh, for sure. But his conclusions are completely subjective, and it's the others. Like, this is the nice side. Like, I would expect someone a bit more flagrant and a bit more expressive when you talk about people bashing feminism or the left. That you always get those sort of people that are like no bullshitter. That sort of attitude. It's like you just sort of this is stupid. This is another feminist crap. It's like, no, this guy's actually thinking about it. Say, look at the poster. You see, she's taller than everyone else. It's like, okay. And
I think artistically she is the focus in the second one. If you look at all lines lead to her. It's just,
maybe. I mean, the ghost character was the
the
villain, and that was a big mystery. And what was going on with stealing all this equipment, and it had a lot of good elements from a heist movie. It had a lot of good elements from action movies, and of course, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids sort of stuff. So I thought it was. I saw it in 3D, so I thought it was really cool. So, but there's not much depth to it, guys. It's not this big symbolic idea.
A Marvel movie, I wouldn't expect a lot of depth.
No, it's like, oh, he's big. He's a big, strong man now, and he's in the ocean. And you're like, yeah, for about 30 seconds, and then he faints because he can't do it for too long.
This journalist praises not only the fact of the strength and smarts of the leading female, which would be understandable and maybe even laudable, but she also rejoices in how the male character is shown as hapless.
Stupid blogger person. I mean, dime a dozen. They get paid. Entertainment reporter. Oh, this is a great feminist story about a woman overpassing the male patriarchy in her dominant world where she's stronger than all the men. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Like if what happened in the comics happened in the movie, where the female villain saw a female superhero and then suddenly surrendered and said, maybe some jail time is pretty good for me. You're a woman. I'm a woman. I'm going to do you solid because we're both women. And I'm just going to go ahead and give up to go to jail. If that actually happened in the movie, then yeah, it's pretty big and
yeah,
I'd be really dumb.
If you want to subvert someone's expectations between heroes and villains, and they happen to be two females, and one female just decides to give up, yeah, that probably wouldn't work too well with the audience. So again, bloggers who say crap like this are a dime a dozen. Don't listen to them, laugh at them, quote them, post them on Twitter, have a good laugh with your friends. I do it all the time.
Yeah, I would expect if we wanted to use examples outside of movies, I would go with like maybe the producer or the director or something they said,
Right.
a writer or something like that.
He should be attacking the movie, not a blogger's opinion who's clearly biased. So, probably not the best argument.
With his successes due only to accident, the author of the article complains that the MCU is not going far enough, but is moving in the right direction. And she looks forward to seeing how the MCU will deal with the introduction of Captain Marvel, who has already been a focal point of propaganda in recent Marvel comics. And
okay, that part is true. that part is true because the comics are just went on full propaganda. That part is true.
Yeah, I don't argue against that because, again, I haven't seen the movie. I've seen reviews, but yeah, again,
the movie was
bloggers.
horrific. The movie was horrifically bland.
Yeah, I'm not. Again, when I watch a superhero movie, I'm not there to see high drama, and it's not like I'm going to watch Gone with the Wind or The Godfather or anything
Except for
dramatic.
Marvel. And with Logan being a really, really good exception, but usually if it's Marvel, then I'm not going to expecting to see Citizen Kane.
When you have Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman in almost not a post-apocalyptic, but like this apocalyptic-ish mutant world,
Yeah.
it's like you're gonna get some pretty heavy duty scenes.
And you got this fantastic Broadway actor, then you have a Shakespearean actor together. I mean, they would be wasted in your typical Marvel movie.
Right, and if you put them at the focus of every scene, you're gonna get some really great scenes, especially when you have Patrick Stewart acting an old man who is an old man and he's decrepit and he's losing his powers. Then you have Logan who's also older and he's also decrepit and he's also losing his powers. And you have this guy who's like an attendant, the albino, he's just sort of helping out. And then you have this little girl come into their life and they're like, what do we do? And it's just this beautiful idea, which
It's great. I mean,
which they-
it's a great movie. It's a great movie. And the writers are not afraid to do what they need to do to bring the dream bring the dream alive.
And it works so well with what he was a limousine driver. He was just making ends meet. He was copping off drugs to keep his friends' powers in check. Like he was just so much respect of what he was trying to do, even though he knows his life is crap and he's dying. And
This sense of dread is kind of like it's kind of what I wanted from the Picard show / movie thing that's coming out, but
Oh,
it
dear.
doesn't seem like the case.
the exact opposite of true.
It's the exact opposite. That's a whole other issue. That's
Yeah.
but Logan was very, very good. But to the point, I'm not expecting Marvel movies to be these deep dramas or anything. Normally, Logan being pretty much, I think, the only exception in the modern Marvel trajectory.
Yeah, that's why I'm not too excited about eventually watching the Infinity Gauntlet movie version. Doesn't really attract me. I read the comic back in the '80s. Pretty happy with that.
Yeah, they probably should have gone with the comic.
Oh no, that would not have worked. I honestly, how would you imagine having? Like they pulled out so many characters. Like I'm sure they did a lot for the movie, but in the comic book, it's like this Wolverine gets killed in like 2 panels. You're like, what? They just throw X-Men at him. You're like, oh, gone. And then there's Adam Warlock and all his camaraderie group of people, and then they get it was the Eternals. They came in, and they had Galactus.
Pretty much. When you watch Infinity Gauntlet, just don't think. Kind of just switch off your brain. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's a convoluted mess. It has time travel in it. So
Yeah, that's the
This time
problem. That's a huge problem. When you have time travel, and then you have all those other stones that do everything else. You're like, okay, Power Stone.
why couldn't they have just let half the world stay dead and then the heroes get revenge on Thanos? I mean, this is a whole other thing. I guess this is like going into the problems of an Infinity Gauntlet, but like or whatever it was called, Endgame. But yeah, the writers should have done a no takes backseat scenario and then left time travel out of the whole thing. Just let the people who died in the last movie stay dead.
That would be pretty dark, but. Eh. Oh, we have like 10 seconds left. Amazing.
So too, those of us who look for symbolic patterns, we should all pay attention as this trope, this sign of the times.
Okay, guys, do not look for symbolic patterns unless you're talking about one movie or one story, okay? Do not like start connecting this crazy trail. It's like in this movie they talk about women and this is clearly a propaganda piece. And in this movie there's a girl and she takes over a man's job and that means it's like, no, guys, don't do that. Okay? When you see a bad movie and it's blatantly obvious that there's a political slant to it, then you have to start questioning why that is. And if you find out quotes from the director or writer, you're like, oh, there we go. That makes sense. So that's how you start analyzing. You look for meaning. And if you can't find it, you have to go outside the lore and inside the minds of the creators to explain it. And that's why we get movies like Ghostbusters and all the other horrible films that you might find an explanation that could be because of feminism or could be because of left or right-leaning thinking. Like, what was that that Kevin Sorbo movie. I can't remember what it's called. That
God's Not Dead.
he basically is. It's basically a Second Amendment movie, and if
Oh, I don't know about that one.
yeah, no, there's. I was just introduced to it today, and it's basically pro Second Amendment and pro Christianity, and they're
Oh, yeah.
defending their home from Antifa or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. A counter response to.
That may be something that might become a guilty pleasure of mine, but I'm not sure
I
if
was
we-
like, Kevin Sorbo, you got the right actor for that.
I do like him in Hercules because that show was delightfully cheesy.
So was
It is
Andromeda. Yeah, him and
it's a guilty pleasure of mine too.
Hercules, Xena, and Andromeda. I think he was just like, that was his constant meal ticket for like 10 years. Just Kevin Sorbo, just boom, boom, boom. Wow. That was the 90s and the early 2000s. Just boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Ah, boy. Funny guy. All right. I think we're done. So, yeah.
Shows every sign of being on an accelerating ascent.
So I would disagree in general when you're talking about movies coming out. Yes, there is a pattern to see, not a symbolic pattern. That's really pushing it, but a pattern indeed of writers, directors getting caught up in, hey, we should represent X group, or we should have this woman body slam this man, or whatever. Yeah, you could definitely see patterns like that, but not symbolic patterns. That's pushing it. That is.
I mean, he could have. I mean, with for example, with Ghostbusters 2016, he could have brought in any number of statements from Paul Feig about being pro-feminist or
Right.
anti-male or anything, because he actually put on like skits where he's saying he's trying to convince the audience that women are funnier than men and all that sort of stuff. So he could have taken those sort of moments and added them in as evidence. Hey, look, check this out. Look, Paul Feig, he's the guy who did Ghostbusters 2016, and then he could have done that with the other examples and other movies he proposed. This is the general consensus here. This is what's happening. It's not just an isolated incident. This is happening here. It's happening here. It's happening here. It's all backed up by the beliefs and the efforts of the people making these movies. Here are their statements.
Right. To talk about the actual lore or content of a movie being symbolically linked to the lore and content of another movie is really like that's like, some sort of weird conspiracy theory of Hollywood in general. We all know Hollywood is left-leaning. We all know the entertainment industry is left-leaning, but that doesn't mean they're suddenly going to be stupid and start pumping out feminist propaganda pieces because they're going to lose money. And yes, that trend is ongoing, but it's eventually going to burn out. Well, they're not going to no one's going to buy these comics. So
yeah, they don't.
They don't. With the
comic shops are closing one after another.
Comics,
and it's a
movies,
disaster.
video games. It's, these things are primarily for guys. So not to say girls don't like them too, but
Superhero comics are for men, okay?
Yeah, essentially. They are power fantasies on some degree, as most stories tend to be. But the high action, high adventure stories have that element. So to do something like that is really hard to narrow down into a propaganda sort of linked symbol. It's just too much for my brain to possibly connect the dots because it can't be done. So,
I can't see where he's coming from. I can see that they do have some of these elements, and these movies do have some of these elements in there. They're trying to push some sort of message, or they echo some NPC talking points.
Yeah.
But I think it's more like this is happening on an individual basis rather than like an overarching conspiracy. I think it's just I don't think they're that smart.
that is a very high. Okay, doing symbolism in a story is very high level, and to do it right is even more difficult. So
I think this guy is too smart.
Yes,
for these guys that he's talking about.
I think he should have sat down with another critic and go, you know what I think? I think there's a pattern in symbols in the content of movies that's happening the past 10 years. And you're like, okay, I see where you're coming from, buddy. Just you're
giving them way too much credit.
Yeah,
because this guy is smart. He knows what he's talking about. He's good at analyzing things and finding patterns. I think he's giving the Hollywood people way too much credit
And
when
some of
it
his
comes to them symbolizing
and
things.
some of his videos, which are getting pretty good views. I mean, Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Dismantling All Order, Symbolic versus Literal Interpretations of the Bible. There's Symbolism of Logan. I mean, he's doing a lot of stuff that is looking at lore and the occult and meaning
It
behind
looks
stuff.
interesting. It
Oh
looks
yeah,
interesting.
but I bet half it's all interpretive, which
Could be. Could be.
which is not my cup of tea. I would prefer the empirical analysis. Looking at something like the King Emperor Penguins videos on battle strategy or
Oh yeah.
tactics. Even Mahler's videos where he just takes apart every scene, why it's logically inconsistent. Stuff that is you can't argue. It's definitely there.
Yeah.
So, whew. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for sticking by for the past 2 hours. That was pretty fun. If you have anything else, do leave them in the comments or leave it on my Twitter. Anywhere you can, get a hold of me for videos. Go to my Discord, leave me a video suggestion. I think LiteratureDevil is really into criticizing other critics or other YouTube videos. We've been doing it for a while now. So don't be shy. We do appreciate your time, and have yourself a great Saturday.
Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.